And we should be live for the Steelers Depot question and answer live stream here on Monday, June 7th. As always, I am Alex Kazora. Alongside me is Dave Bryan of SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us again, answering any and all of your Steelers questions for the next hour. Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm feeling a lot better than, than I did about a week. I probably sound a lot better too.
Good. We're all very glad to hear that again. Just let me know on audio and stuff. I think Dave should sound fine, but if he doesn't, if he sounds like a robot, then please let us know, and then we will dive into your questions. As a reminder, if you want to, because sometimes the chat gets really busy, if you want to have your question be guaranteed to be asked and answered by myself and Dave, you can send us a super chat and you will move to the front of the line. So just let me know on audio here really quick through the chat, and then we can get started. And let me know if the video and audio is good. Until then, though, shout out to some people who are here right now. We have Desmond, we have John, we have Mike, we have KT the Hulk, David O, our own David O, Ultimate Elite 11, ODG Dorkman, AJC, the last stylebender, Lucky 1729. So again, just making sure you guys can hear me and everything. I think we're okay, and so we will dive into the questions. We'll start off with John Pennington, who asked Dave and Alex if Dobbs and Haskins outplay Rudolph in the preseason games in a Canada system. Which direction will they go with these quarterbacks? It's hard to really know until you actually see it happen. I still really don't see too many scenarios where Rudolph isn't going to be the number two to start the year, just because they were high on him, obviously coming out of Oklahoma State. They've continued to talk him up and praise him. They give him the contract extension. So, barring some sort of just complete disaster, it's hard to see Rudolph not being Ben's backup week one.
It would have to be a total disaster of a preseason for
Hmm.
Mason Rudolph, and then on top of it, one of the other two quarterbacks would just really have to, play out of there. You know what? The only way Rudolph really, in my mind, is not going to be the number two is if he's injured and just is on IR or something like that.
Right.
It's hard to imagine them cutting him or anything like that. After giving him that money and extending him and all like that, and excuse me, it's just unfathomable at this point. Excuse me, to think that he won't be the number two.
Right, and we do have a good article though. Despite that, the answer on Rudolph here, a good article from our Jonathan Heitritter talking about Dwayne Haskins and kind of diving into the film on him and the potential he has, and it'll be a really interesting summer for him. Obviously, this will be his best chance for playing time, clearly, and I know the word on Dwayne Haskins right now is that he's having a really strong spring, but you would expect that from a guy with his physical talents and the arm strength that he has. If he wasn't looking good in shorts and shells and 7-on-7, that would be the red flag to me. So I don't put a lot of stock into what Haskins is doing right now. If you guys just let me know in the chat here, just really quickly, you can hear me and Dave fine, right? I just haven't seen any feedback on that. I just want to make sure that we're not talking into the void here. But just let me know if everything sounds okay, audio, video wise, and then we'll keep going here. Okay, last style bender says that we can hear you, so I just wanted to make sure on that. Appreciate it. Mike Adesso says, "Hi guys, Alex. If camp at Latrobe was this week on day one, what are the top few things you are focusing on?" Um, Honestly, the way I treat camp, and I'm gonna answer probably the question more vaguely than you probably would like, Mike. So I apologize. The first 2 days when they aren't in pads, I'm primarily just looking at kind of depth chart, where guys are running, the order in which they're running, what's first team offensive line, second team offensive line, etc. Not that it means a ton at the moment, but you just want to know that stuff so you can identify changes after, later in the training camp, after preseason games, injuries, etc. So you can compare and contrast. Okay, this guy was running third team to start camp, now he's second team, or vice versa. And so I think I just like to kind of catalog and get a feel for where their starting points are, more so than I'm looking at actual performance, because it's early in camp, A and B, because we're not in pads yet. So shorts and shells, run sessions are meaningless, and there's just not a ton of contact, and the competitive level isn't quite as high as it's going to be once the pads come on traditionally for day three. We'll see how they do camp this year, if that gets changed at all. But the first 2 days, I'm really just kind of getting a feel for the lay of the land. And then day three, I think you start kind of getting into a more heightened evaluation mode of these guys. Good question though, Mike. Next question here comes from, let's see, just got some hellos from the guys here. Lucky 1729 saying he's predicting 17-0 again. I don't know how we're doing it in past years in a 16 game season, but fair enough. I think I'm just being a little jokey there. Let's see. Micah does another question. If everyone would remain healthy all season and play at their expected skill level, how would you expect the running back position to shake out 1 through 4 with overall touches? Table. So the question, you assuming everyone stays healthy, give me the order of touches, most to least.
Yeah, I would think. I mean, look, 300. We've been talking about Najee Harris since he was drafted, right? What the expectation should be on total touches for him. I mean, it's hard to envision him not hitting 300. You know, right around in there, give or take. Obviously, the extra game in there and how that goes, we'll see his health and all like that. But I mean, assuming he stays healthy, I think 300. From there, I mean. Benny Snell last couple of seasons gotten what at least 100 touches, hasn't he? Now
right.
you wouldn't probably if things go well you wouldn't probably expect him to get those kind of touches this year. So I would dial that down and say I don't know somewhere between 70 and 80 maybe touches for a guy like Benny Snell, and even that might be high. And then I'm going to assume that Anthony McFarland, right now makes the team. I have no reason to think that he won't. I mean, it's obviously he's probably not a lock right now, but you got a kind of a mid-round draft pick invested in him. Last year was kind of a redshirt season for him. I don't know, 30 to 40 touches. I don't know. That seems about right for him. I think. And as far as any other, running back, here's the hoping. That's it. That's the list, because something's gone horribly wrong. I think if you're getting people outside of those three, any touches there. So, I think it starts with the bulk of Najee Harris getting around 300 total touches. Benny Snell, like I said, I think it's kind of dependent on the workload, obviously, and the health of Najee Harris. But, I don't know, 70 to 80, and then, a little bit less than that for a guy like Anthony McFarland. And I would expect those three to be the main three.
Okay. So your order's Harris, Snell, then McFarland. Is that the order that you're going with?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's still early too,
Sure.
right?
Just your best guess as we sit here today.
Yeah,
That's your
I mean,
three.
I could come up with scenarios where I would flip the two between
Mm-hmm.
McFarland and Snell, but I still think in a perfect world, come the end of the season, they'll probably be within about 15 touches of each other. I would think.
Yeah. I'll flip it. I mean, obviously Harris is number one, assuming he's healthy. He's the guy, no question about it. I'll say McFarland number two in terms of the most touches, because maybe there's a little bit more as a receiver there, but I think just working with Matt Canada, his coach in college at Maryland, is going to be a benefit. And I think McFarland, I know last year was pretty quiet, didn't really do a whole lot, and didn't make much of an impact. No one in the run game did, but he was an underclassman coming out of redshirt sophomore in a difficult COVID year. Even though running backs don't have an incredibly steep learning curve, one of the easier learning curves when it comes to making the jump to the NFL, I could understand why maybe he wasn't NFL ready, because he was such a young guy who didn't have a ton of experience the way that some of these seniors like Claypool and Dotson and those guys did. So I think McFarland number two, Snell's three, and then I'll go Kalen Ballage number four.
I mean, you think Ballage You think they're going to keep that many running backs?
Well, in my 53-man roster prediction a couple weeks ago, I had four plus Derek Watt, so put Ballage. But once you get past, again, as you said,
Right.
if Harris stays healthy, the rest of it becomes almost irrelevant. But that's the order I'll go with.
Right. I mean, even if a guy like Ballage ends up making the 53, man, you better pray that you don't have to. He's probably going to be more in that. You would think one of those guys would be inactive.
Mm-hmm.
But here's to praying we don't have to see too many Kalen Ballage carries.
Yeah, the last style bender says Ballage is the power back for short yardage. Yeah, Ballage has not had a good NFL career. That's why he's bounced around, and this is like his fourth or fifth team in a couple of seasons. But since coming into the league, he has the fifth best third and fourth down and short conversion percentage in the NFL. He's like 75%. It's a really strong number. I suspect that and his special teams value are the two main reasons why the Steelers signed him. Plus, he was dirt cheap.
I think really, and yeah, you're great to point out the short yardage stuff, but hopefully Najee Harris is going to be a
Hmm.
guy that's going to be dealing with your short yardage stuff. And I'll put it to you this way: for Kalen Balaj, I think to make the 53 man roster, he's really going to have to impress the living heck out of Danny Smith
Right.
first and foremost. I think. I mean, it's a fun footnote with the short yardage stuff, but that's not what's going to put him on the 53 man roster. I really think he might need an injury or something along those lines to
Yeah.
happen.
Fair enough. Ultimate Elite 11, who do you think will be the safety number three? Seems it'll be Antoine Brooks Jr. or maybe Trey Nord, which is very concerning. Understand the concern there. Ultimate Elite, I mean, we got to define free safety versus strong safety. Doesn't have to be the same guy to back up both spots. I think it's strong safety. It'll probably be Antoine Brooks Jr. I could definitely see him having a role in the in dime packages this year as the sixth defensive back. Cam Sutton, the dime defender last year. Now he's either your starting slot corner or starting outside corner, right corner in sub packages and dime. So I could see Brooks getting a role there and being Edmonds' backup. In terms of the backup to Minka, that's a really good question. Could it be Arthur Millette? He played more free safety when he came back off of injury last year with the Jets. I suspect they're going to envision Millette as more of a slot corner than a safety, but if there was an injury there, then that could be an option. And obviously, they're looking at Malik Hooker, and they could still bring somebody in. It's kind of at this point, Dave, with them signing Millette and they brought in Carl Joseph and they're bringing in, or they just brought in Malik Hooker, feels like they're going to sign somebody at some point. Clearly, there's a desire to add depth to the safety position behind Minka Fitzpatrick and Terrell Edmonds.
Yeah, look, you go all the way back to what year did I pick 2012 or
Hmm.
whatnot? I think on average somewhere around 3 point something players after the start of rookie mini camp, or after rookie mini camp has ended. On average, this team brings in three or will sign three players that all that'll end up making the 53 man roster. Now that's obviously on average. Will we hit that number this year? I don't know, but I'm gonna. It's not going out on a limb to suggest one or two. I
Hmm.
think even from this point forward. Now, the month of June normally, historically, I wrote about this a few days ago as well. This team just doesn't have a history of bringing free agents in off the street in the month of June. Now, that's obvious. You don't have a lot going on in June. You want to see what you got right now through OTAs. Obviously, rookie or mandatory minicamp will get underway next week, and then you have that break between for the rest of the month, and then on into July. So to say that the team doesn't have a long history of signing players in June, it makes sense. But once you get into July, and obviously once training camp gets underway, uh, I'll be shocked if we don't have another couple players added to this 90-man roster, and I'll be shocked if a couple of those players. Look, it could obviously be an outside linebacker. You
Hmm.
could use some safety depth here. You could obviously use maybe a tight end still. So yeah, they're not done. And as far as I think we're going to have to wait. Ask us that question after training camp gets open, with of who maybe a better idea who might be on that safety depth chart,
Hmm.
because I don't think everybody's on the roster right now.
No, I'm with you. And I think there's a lot of things to figure out, especially in that secondary in terms of backup spots and sub package roles. There's a lot of young guys there, not a lot of proven players that are all going to be kind of fighting each other and potentially outside options as well for some sort of role and to make the 53 man roster. So yeah, I could see this team being really active at cutdowns, Dave, like it was a couple years ago, probably 5 6 years ago, where they signed like 3 or 4 guys at cutdowns because depth here there's a big rookie class, but the overall depth of this team is thin in so many areas: edge, safety, corner, tight end. Injuries are inevitably going to happen in training camp. I think this team's going to sign a couple guys right around that, 53 man roster cut down deadline.
Yeah, and a lot of people, are curious about obviously about Malik Hooker right now, but you got to caution people right now. Yeah, here's the thing about him. He's 8.5 months removed from Achilles surgery, and probably be good to get Dr. Mel maybe to
Hmm.
comment on this here pretty soon as well too. I think if you look back not only at that injury, I mean that's a brutal injury. People just don't understand the careers that in professional sports that an Achilles injury has ended.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're able to physically come back from that. But I mean, just Google some of the medical papers out there that the studies that have been done on NFL players. I think specifically when it comes to the Achilles injury. So 8.5 months removed from the actual surgery right now puts him in that window where he's starting to get close. So, yeah, the Steelers probably brought him in, gave him a pretty good physical, just checked him out, got to know him a little bit better. But I mean, here's the flip side of that. If I'm Malik Hooker right now, there's no, obviously the Steelers aren't going to have much money to pay him, and it's hard to imagine them paying even really more than minimum. Look at his injury history on top of it. I mean, look, when the guy's healthy, he's made some plays, but when is he? He's missed. How many games has he missed total? To this point, so that's scary. So if you did end up adding a guy like Malik Hooker, it would probably be a lot closer to the start of camp, and I would think it would have to be around close to the minimum.
Yeah, he was on IG Live. I know the other day talking about his visit with Pittsburgh and said I went well, and we'll see what happens. He was again on IG Live this afternoon saying that everything went well. He said there was no real conversation about the medical and in terms of being negative. He said the medical was fine, the visit was fine, nothing bad happened, contrary to some sort of reports that are out there. But he said he's going to take time, and he says he's got a kid on the way, so he wants to make a really informed decision for him and his family. And so I think it's still going to be at least a couple weeks until Malik Hooker signed somewhere, Pittsburgh or otherwise.
And people are saying, look at Richard Sherman's a 30-something-year-old corner. I don't know, and he's a zone corner. I don't know why. I mean, Richard Sherman hasn't absolutely been elite since that Achilles injury. And then Durant, I haven't followed Kevin Durant, but that's obviously basketball and all like that. But I mean, you're picking out two people there out of hundreds of injuries.
Right.
When it comes to this, once again, if you don't believe me, just read the medical journals that are out there. It is an extremely tough injury. Not saying that people can't come back and then have play top notch after it, but I mean the odds are terribly against him because it's such a brutal injury.
Yeah, absolutely. It's possible, and he's got his youth, and so that's good. Dude's still 24 years old, so better to tear your Achilles at 23 than it is at 33. But very tough injury to come back from. Got a nice comment here from Lucky1729 saying, "My guy Dave has great insight." Thank you, Lucky. Appreciate the nice comment. Going back up through the questions here. Lumberzack94 says, "Is Friar Moose not the perfect nickname for 88 Moose?" He says in all caps. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. He's got to play to that status first, but I could see that one sticking. All right, back to the questions here. Mutated Genome, good to hear from you. Alex Dave, do you have a lot of confidence the current offensive line personnel as a group will be an improvement over last season? I don't.
No.
In unison.
Yeah,
they could.
They could, but something's going. We just can't sit here and fanboy and say, based on what we've seen so far. I mean,
because what have we seen? We haven't seen enough.
Right, we haven't seen nothing. We've seen college tape for the most part. Look, I mean, Chikwama Okorafor, there's reason to be concerned there. Going over to a new position at left tackle. Look, Zach Banner played well in the one game in the 2/3 of the game that he played in week 1 against New York Giants. There's some definitely to like there, but outside of him being a tackle eligible, what have we seen out of him too? I mean, that's both your tackles there, and then I mean, look, I feel good about that. David DeCastro we'll be able to bounce back. I really feel good about Kevin Dotson and from what little bit we saw last year. And you asked him to play both left guard and right guard last year, and he talked just 2 weeks ago about spending most of the offseason focusing more on left guard. So there's no reason really, there's reason I think to be optimistic about guys like Dotson, optimistic about David DeCastro bouncing back, but that's it. Kendrick Green's a rookie center, played 4 to 5 games at Illinois at a position. Did I mention he's a rookie? Yeah.
And a junior a junior who came out early.
Right. And then you've got, two really unproven tackles. So I don't know how anybody can ask us to have to be optimistic, especially right now at this point of the offseason. I mean, we'll get into the preseason games and probably get a good 70 total snaps or so with that unit. Maybe look at them that way throughout the preseason there. But I think time, time really is going to tell once the regular season gets started with this bunch.
Right. I mean, it's not that we're pessimistic. It's just a lot of unknown there, a lot of moving parts, a lot of new faces, both personnel and coaching staff. New head offensive line coach, brand new assistant offensive line coach, new offensive coordinators with a lot of moving pieces there. Probably going to be some growing pains to start the year. But mutated, I like that you used the word as a group in that question, because that was my topic of my terrible take today. We're so focused, and rightfully so to a degree, on the individual play of Kevin Dotson, of Zach Banner, of Kendrick Green, etc. How is this group going to play together as a collective five? You have to have that as an offensive line. They have to play as a unit, one cohesive group. If one guy fails, they all fail. And so that'll be, I think, the other test that we're not talking about nearly enough because we are so focused on the individual play of these guys who have not logged a ton of NFL time at their projected spots. So, good question there. I think we're just going to have to wait and see on what that answer is, good or bad. Got some more people in the chat here. It's Aiden Too Cool. Glad to have you back. Saw Kalen Clark there with a question we'll get to in a second. So good to see some familiar names and faces here in the chat. Again, Dave and I answering your Steelers questions until 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You can send us a super chat and get your question asked and answered immediately. Let me roll back up here to some of the questions here and find the most outstanding one. Blake Eberly says, Alex, Duck Hodges, or Tom Brady, and why is it Duck? Duck versus Goat. What is the better name there? You got to go with Ducks. I'm with you, Blake. Kevin Ball 16 says, "What's the expectations for Pat Fryermuth?" I think Dave, we might disagree a little bit on it in terms of his play time. I would just caution, to temper those expectations to some degree because when you're a rookie tight end, when you're a true junior coming out of college, when you played 4 games last year and missed the back half of the year with a shoulder injury, that is a tough climb to the NFL. Now, I think Fryermuth's more NFL ready than a lot of college tight ends, and so that'll help him. But I just want to caution people that that is a difficult jump, and even the most talented rookie tight ends generally struggle and have pretty quiet burst seasons.
You sure better get him on the field for 400 or 500 snaps, like
Yeah.
I've projected.
I think he'll get 400. From there, it gets, I think, a little more debatable.
You better at least try to get him on. The 400 ought to be the minimum.
Mm-hmm.
I think. You put a second round draft pick in a guy that, it depends on who you ask. I had him more as a third round kind of talent, to be honest with you. You better get him on the field. Look, I mean, Eric Ebron, what are you going to ask him to do blocking wise? And I think there's going to be some situations as the season progresses where you're probably going to want, to run a lot of 12 personnel in here with 2 tight ends on the field. And if things obviously go the way that you hope it will, you're probably going to have some situations later in games where you're wanting to run the ball to try to put the game away in the fourth quarter
Mm-hmm.
there. And obviously you're going to want to go a little bit more heavier packages in those situations there. So 400 to 500 snaps. If it's below 400, I'll be terribly disappointed.
Yeah, but in terms of the receiver and the numbers, even going to that route, I think it'll be, I don't have a number top of my head, maybe 20 or so receptions, but with all the weapons on this offense, maybe throwing the football a little bit less, and again, just that rookie tight end curve, I don't know how much he'll be impacting the passing game. Next year, I think he could become the starter, but right now this year, probably much less so. Let's see here. I lost the question there for a second. John Fleckenstein says, "Can you have a top 5 running game with a bottom 5 line?" I mean, I suppose you could, but would have like Barry Sanders or AP back there, or Jim Brown or something. I mean, if we say the Steelers' offensive line finishes bottom 5, I mean, I can't see really any scenario where their run stats reflect top 5 production. Unless Najee Harris is truly the next Hall of Fame running back, and even then, it's going to be tough. So. We'll see how this line grows and improves. I'm not going to say the bottom 5 again. Just talked about how much unknown there is with this group. But if they do finish bottom 5, they're not going to finish top 5 in those categories.
You can go back once again. We had that talk about Saquon Barkley in his rookie year a couple years ago. Where did what
Right.
was the thoughts on the Giants' offensive line?
What did the Giants finish rushing that year? Do you know? Can you be able to pull that up?
I can put what was his rookie season?
2018, I think. Whatever. Just pull up Pro Football References page and then just click on the first year there. Because I mean, yeah, I think you had really good information on kind of contextualizing Barkley's first year, but I don't know where exactly the Giants finish in terms of overall numbers.
What are you wanting the PFF rankings here?
Pro
or were
Football
you wanting?
or Pro Football Reference is like, what do they rank in, yards per carry at least? I mean, I know that's not the say all end all, and I mean like success rates and stuff, but just I'd be curious on that number.
All right, hold on just a minute here, and I'll get to the rankings for 2018, just
Okay,
league
that was
wide here.
2018. Okay, and then after that, we'll have a question here from Paul Brown in a second, talking about Kendrick Green and if he's going to be the starting center. And then we'll have a question from Mike Cadesso talking about the most valuable Steeler, basically on the defensive side of the football.
All right, 2018 regular season. The Giants rushing yards per game. Once again, these are lazy man stats. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so 24th overall in rushing yards per game with 103.1. Rushing yards per play, 4.66 at that ranked them 10th league wide
Okay.
in those two areas there. So, but it goes back to once again what my question was is what was the thoughts on the offensive line? If memory serves me, the offensive line wasn't great that year,
Mm-hmm.
and once again, that's why some of these numbers are deceiving here. Saquon Barkley had a great number of yards from scrimmage as a rookie, but when you look at the success rate that he had running the football, it was horrible. So, and then you look at the advanced stats, Football Outsiders on Saquon from that year too. Not great at all. So I mean, could you have a running back in Najee Harris who puts up somewhere, I don't know, 1,600, 1,700 yards, from scrimmage, and yet, we're scratching our head wondering how the heck did they, you know, maybe not make the playoffs? Yeah, it's possible. Now, obviously, it's less likely to be like that with Najee because he's not the home run hitter that Saquon Barkley is. Saquon, once again, I forget what do you have, like 20 runs or something, like 40 yards or more
Mm-hmm.
during his rookie season. So that will seriously slant some things if 25% of your yardage is coming from 20 plays,
Right.
so to speak there. So uh, the fact of the matter is, if you really have a bottom five offensive line in the league, odds are probably pretty good that the stats that Najee's rushing stats and success rate stats aren't going to be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In other words, you're probably not dealing with a guy with 15 to 1,800 yards from scrimmage if the line is bottom five in the league. If that's what the tape ends up showing, that the line was horrible and yet Najee was able to still have a high success rate, well, and then and the tape obviously will show that,
Mm-hmm.
but if that happens, then boy, you really got yourself a find in Najee Harris. But because Saquon had so many explosive plays during his rookie season, I think that's kind of one of those outlier type situations there.
Right.
So if this offensive line is bottom five, I would expect kind of the statistics for Najee Harris to follow suit.
Yeah, I think that's pretty intuitive for fans to follow, and I think as you've kind of shown in the stats, Barkley had a lot of variance his rookie years, a lot of highs, a lot of lows, a lot of positive plays, a lot of negative plays as well.
Now, here's the one thing I wrote about, and I tweeted about this earlier today.
Mm-hmm.
And don't. It's one of those stats that it's easy to look at and say, and jump on one side of the fence with. The Steelers were last in the league last year in runs of 10 yards or longer. Now, I'm sure everybody listening is not dropping their cup of coffee or their soda or cold drink or whatnot in being in shock here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who was second? Who had the second lowest amount of runs of 10 yards or more in the regular season last season? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they went on to win the Super Bowl here. Okay, now what is the difference? Does that mean 10-yard runs? Do we put too much stock into them? To some degree, yes. But if you look at the overall success rates that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had on for their running backs, it was like 54, 55, something 56%, something around there. Whereas the Steelers' run success rate for their running back group was around 44, 45.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the difference. You can get away with not having the 10-yard or longer runs as long as you have the success rates, on a play-by-play basis that Tampa Bay had. Now, I guarantee if Tampa Bay didn't have the success rates that they had last year out of that running group, then they would have won the Super Bowl last year more than likely because they
Right.
wouldn't have had the running game to accommodate everything that went on there. So the good thing about Najee Harris is he, of course, college is college. He played for Alabama. He played in the SEC. Yada yada. I know all of the all the qualifiers there, but he did have a high. He had 20, what was it? 21% of his entire college runs at the University of Alabama gained 10 or more yards. Now he's not an explosive runner. He's not going to be the guy probably going to pick up a lot of 20 yards or more on carries for you. But I mean, if he can kind of hit, I don't know, 10, 12% number, 13% number on runs of 10 yards or longer, that's probably going to bode well for the Steelers running game.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I mean, hopefully it'll be better than last year. It's hard not to be. It's hard to be worse than where it was last year. Shout out to some people in the chat. We'll get to those questions as soon as we can. We got Russ here. We got Saloon from Brazil, staying up late or early, whatever time it is over there. So thank you guys for being here. Want to get back to the questions. Paul Brown saying, "Hey Alex, why does it seem to be the Steelers Nation consensus Kendrick Green is going to be the starting center? Is it really because we have no choice? What are realistic expectations for the third rounder?" I don't want to write it in pen and say that Green's going to be the guy for BJ Finney, but I think Green's the more athletic player. He's going to give you more upside. I mean, I think you mentioned this the other day, Dave, that if BJ Finney's your starting center, I mean, that's fine, I guess, but your offensive line is not going to be very good. It might not be 32nd, but it's going to be below average, just in terms of he's not going to give you anything. He's not going to transform your offensive line. He's not going to be like, wow, BJ Finney is just absolutely killing it out there. That's not going to be the case with him. Green, there's more bust potential, I guess, in a negative sense, because he's kind of a rookie, and I think he's got some inconsistencies on tape. But there's more upside here. He can really make those impact blocks, impact plays, and especially if they're going to run more of a zone scheme. So not guaranteed, and Finney's going to be the veteran guy, but I like Green's chances of winning the job week one.
And look at it this way, this is something we talked about and even Jonathan Heitritter, talked about that when we talked, had him on and Tom the other night and gave them a chance to talk on the subject too. My thoughts on this, look at what the bar is here, man. We're talking about BJ Finney and JC Hassenauer here, and God bless BJ Finney. I think he has served his purpose to date. Obviously during the previous years when he was with Steelers, better guard than he is center, even though he played center. I mean, pretty much his entire career at Kansas State there. How many total snaps has BJ Finney hasn't even played the? I don't think how many total snaps has BJ Finney played at center in the NFL? 500, 600.
My guess is less than that, but I don't know the number because he's been
I mean,
more of a guard.
it's obviously not a full season.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. How many starts he had at center is the question.
Yeah, not many.
Five,
and
6.
so the bar is low there. If you spend a third round draft pick on a guy like Kendrick Green, who has the athleticism that he has, and the physicality and everything that goes along with it, if he is not the week one starter, he damn sure it better not take him but another week or two to become the week one starter. Because once again, the only thing I think that would mostly prevent him from doing it is the between the ears kind of stuff. Maybe not having the full grasp of some calls or looks or whatnot, maybe that you want him to have, that maybe a guy like BJ Finney has had. But the bar is not high at all when it comes to the center position and a guy like BJ Finney to beat out. And to be quite honest with you, it should serve as a little bit of a disappointment, I think, if Kendrick Green can't beat out a guy like BJ Finney for week one.
Yeah, I would hear you. We'll see what happens though. We'll see how they look in camp. I think John Penton also asked the question about how many people go to camp with you. I make the drive out there by myself, but usually a couple days or a week around camp. Hopefully it'll be the same this year. We'll have Tim Rice, who does great photography and takes great photos of training camp, and David O, who I don't think will be able to attend this year. I think he's gonna be out of the country, so that's it's a bummer that he probably won't be able to make it to St. Vincent this year, assuming that they return to Latrobe. But just me, and then Tim Rice, and sometimes David O as well. Let's see here. Next question. Mike Cadesso saying, after seeing how this defense took a step back after Bush's injury, who's the biggest loss this year with lack of depth concerning at safety and outside linebacker, Watt or Minka, or maybe Bush still? So who can the Steelers least afford to lose? It was an article we wrote the other day. I forget what website it was to pick TJ Watt, and obviously there's you couldn't say you're wrong for picking TJ Watt as the most valuable player. I would lean Minka slightly because depth there is equally as poor. Who's going to replace Minka? No idea. And The Steelers have had really good pass rushers. Even in 2018, they had over 50 sacks. Watt had a 13 sack season, and the defense was still pretty bad. And they didn't get turnovers. They didn't create splash plays. They couldn't capitalize on the pressure they were getting. What changed was when they had a ball hawking secondary capped by the trade for Minka Fitzpatrick, where this defense was capitalizing on all the pressure they were generating up front. And so I think it's easier to manufacture pressure than it is ball skills and playmaking ability. And I think we've kind of seen the Steelers kind of have really strong pass rushers that don't necessarily result in turnovers and don't result in good defenses overall.
Rushing coverage have got to go hand in hand. I know people don't like hearing that, but you can make an average secondary look a lot better with a good pass rush and good secondary unit. Give a pass rush a little bit more time. If they play together. I know it sounds like a cliche and all like that, but it absolutely is the truth. Then you add in a guy like T.J. Watt, who gives you kind of an unfair advantage on any pass rush situation there on top of it. All that said, I mean, look, you did suffer some losses in this defense during the offseason. It's going to be interesting to see the kind of step that Alex Highsmith can take this year. I mean, obviously, what we saw him do and progress during his rookie season was nice, but nice is not going to be good enough playing opposite T.J. Watt. He's got to really start making making it hard for teams to dedicate slides over to that side to T.J. Watt. We'll see. You look at obviously who's going to play the slot corner position there. Right. That's something that we're probably not going to be able to answer until probably right around closer to the start of the regular season there. So there's another another question mark there. And then obviously you want you're hopeful that Devin Bush can pick up right where he left off there and be back fine. Long story short, I put this poll on my Twitter account earlier today. This team had an outstanding adjusted net yards per passing attempt number under 5 last season. They had the second lowest adjusted net yards passing attempt number in the NFL, behind only the Rams last season. There, are they going to be able to be under 5 again in 2021? I kind of have my doubts, and if that's the case, can they at least hover around the 5.5 or 5.6 mark? Mm-hmm. Because that's quite honestly, that 5.6 or 5.7 or lower is where that defense needs to be, based on kind of where our concerns about the offensive side of the ball is, to help try to counteract that move in the other direction there.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, the rush and cover go together, but if you had to choose which guy would be more devastating to this defense to lose, Watt or Minka, who would you choose if you had to make a Sophie's choice?
Oh man, I don't see how you can do anything without Watt.
Okay, fair enough.
Personally,
I'd be curious on a poll on that. What do you think the split would be? Because I'm going Minka slightly, but I think the majority of people would choose T.J. Watt, and obviously that's a perfectly acceptable answer.
Yeah, I think most would go with Watt there. Look, I mean, I don't want to find out for sure, because I mean, Minka does such a great job on the back half there. But I've always been a firm believer, the further you get away from the football, it's a little bit more manageable, especially if you have, someone the talent level as T.J. Watt up there rushing and passing there. But and he's also good against the run on top of it. And that's another aspect there. I mean, if you lost him, you'd lose that play against the run. You'd obviously lose that pass rush ability. And my answer has not trying to take anything away from Minka. Obviously, and I think you understand that there. But I think Watt would be the brutal loss there.
Yeah, I might ask that a Twitter poll question and get your guys' take. I think it'd be like 80-20 Watt, but like you said, let's not find out the answer to either of those. Kaylin Clark, if you can recall, which of the undrafted free agent corners have the highest athletic upside? Granted, the player replacing Hilton will need to be technically sound, especially with tackling. That's a good question, Kaylin. I wouldn't go Shakur Brown. I wouldn't go Mark Gilbert. I think it'll be either Steiner or Wade. I don't know which I would go with. I think I like a guy like Shakur Brown more overall than those guys, but in terms of just pure athleticism, which is your question, your Brown didn't get drafted because he was small and slow. I think I'd go probably Lamont Wade. All right, next question here. Lucky talking about, can the Steelers run game get to top 10? If they do, I'll be happy, but I'll just take average. If they get to 16th, I mean, I will take that considering where they were a year ago.
Man, if you can get to 15 or 16
Yeah.
and that defense not take too much of a step backwards, uh, I think you got something to work with there.
Hmm.
The here's the thing: are we talking about, what are we talking about when we're talking about ranking? Are we
Yeah.
talking about success rates? Are we talking about yards per carry? Are we talking about yards per game? Quite honestly, to be you're really they do need to be top 10 in success rate. You
Hmm.
know, uh, if you put them in the middle, if you put them in the middle of the pack of 16th, 17th, in the league in success rates, what are you looking at there? You're probably looking at a number less than 50%, right?
Right. Yeah. They can be top 10
So,
there.
so make sure when you ask a question about top whatever, yards per carry don't cut it anymore. I mean, we've seen some teams have some good yards per carry before, just not cut it. It's got to be about the success rates here moving forward when you talk about running games and all like that. So I guess my answer to that would be they. The only way this team I think is going to be able to compete
Hmm.
in 2021 is to have the success rate of 50% or higher, which then in turn as a team should put them in the top 10 in the NFL.
Right. I mean, not that I don't want to get bogged down in this. We probably don't have the information to test it right here, but I would assume and imagine there's a pretty strong correlation between the highest yards per carry team and the highest success rate team. Not that it's 100%, but I imagine the top five teams in yards per carry are also right around top five in overall run success rate. Or maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's my feeling.
All right. Well, let's go back to last season and go to yards per carry. Right.
Right, because I mean the Steelers were last in yards and they were last in yards per carry, and they were 29th, I think, in success rate or 30th or something.
Okay. Baltimore, because I mean, Lamar Jackson's going to help you in that alone, and that and Gus Edwards, you average I think something like 5 yards per carry or something like that. I
Hmm.
mean, no wonder 5 point they led the league 5.53 yards per carry. Second was obviously Tennessee 5.16. Third place, the Eagles 5.03. Who would have guessed that,
Yeah,
right?
how about that? So where were they
Uh,
in success rate? Do you have that number off? If it's
I
too
don't, I
much
don't,
to
I
get
don't
to,
have.
okay,
Yeah, I don't
that,
have
that's
that in front of
that's what
me
I figured.
here.
But that's what I'm asking. I'd be curious to chart those and put them next to each other. And again, they're not going to be 100%. There's going to be some outliers, I'm sure, but I think they generally would go hand in hand. My guess. I don't know. Steeler Nation highlights. I apologize, haven't had as much video content out lately. I got some longer form videos I like to work on in the off season, the bus series, the season in review type videos. I have some other stuff I want to do on the Steelers' worst loss ever. I have a video I really want to get done on that. So it's a little bit slower in the off season, but I like to kind of do some stuff I generally can't do during the regular season. Todd Christian saying, with us sleeping Baltimore and losing to Cleveland by 2 points the second time with Mason Rudolph, why is it that people are picking us third in the division? I just think they see a team with an aging quarterback, probably in the last year of his career, an offensive line in flux, a lot more questions around this team than most years previously, and I see a Browns team that looks legit for the first time in this decade and this century, and they see a Ravens team that continues to be its steady, consistent self. And so I think that's the key reasons why I think most analysts are picking Pittsburgh to finish third in the North.
And I think it's the old "what have you done?" The
Hmm.
recency bias
Right.
that creeps in there. You see how the Steelers played down the stretch there, and then obviously in the playoffs and all like there, and then you get into the headline action of it. Look, let's remember a lot of these NFL analysts don't dive into these teams. Most of them, it's the old 80-20 rule when it comes to. I think 20% of the people do the proper 80% of the work, whereas the other 80% only do about 20% of the proper work when it comes to that. So a lot of recency, a lot of headlines go into that, and obviously major media drives the machine here.
Hmm.
So and that's like Vegas. You look at the Vegas odds there. That's all driven by what the betting public thinks. I think wasn't there a bet today? Somebody put I saw something on there. Someone put a massive bet on I think the Patriots, and it drove their odds down quite a bit there because sportsbooks obviously want to cover their back end
Mm.
of things there. So
That was
you
you, right?
know,
You're all in on Matt
no, no, no,
Jones.
no, no,
No.
not that big. But uh, you know, it's all a matter of who you want to put your trust in, I guess, as far as the analysts go. I mean, you got the other people on the other side of the fence there saying, "Look, don't write this team off
Hmm.
too quick here." I really think because of this division, and I've said this several times, it's going to be hard. It's going to take a lot of injuries for one or a couple of teams for me to come off this by the start of the season. I really think the AFC North's going to beat the living snot out of each other
Right.
this year. And I mean, look, you want to get into the strength of schedule, yada yada, based on last year's record. Well, the AFC North plays, all four teams play a very similar, obviously common opponent schedule this year. So that means just as hard as the Steelers' schedule is, it's going to be just as hard, maybe slightly less for teams like Cleveland and Baltimore. I really think you could see a 9-8 record, or at best maybe a 10-7 record. Take the AFC North there. I mean, I really think it's going to be a dogfight in this division, and that it's an imperative. I really think for teams, and it's a Captain Obvious statement, year to year in and year out. Teams got to win within division. If you take
Hmm.
care of games within the division, you're probably going to fare pretty well overall. Period.
Right.
It really is going to be that this year here. So I think I think why you're hearing what you're hearing, and I think it's fair to some degree. The common sense is, I think, what a win total of around 8.5
Hmm.
for the Steelers. I think that's really kind of fair right now from where we sit right now. Maybe that creeps up to about a 9. Maybe there's some confidence that will creep in there that'll push that win total number to 9. But I really think that's fair there, and I think really a lot of the analysis that you're seeing here is more of the recency type bias, and then just the headlines of Ben's another year older and the offensive line and yada yada.
Right. And ultimately, what you say, or what I say, what analysts say doesn't mean a thing when the ball kicks off week one. No one's going to care about what the predictions and projections are.
Right.
Carl Ward, and also, by the way, here got Quality Colos. Keep up the amazing podcast, listener for 5 years. Thank you so much for listening, Dave, and I certainly appreciate it. Carl Ward saying, "Hey, Alex, why isn't Minka in consideration for playing in the slot? I think he should play there in some certain situations." He does, but he's not going to be a full time slot guy. The run defense isn't quite as strong, and if you're going to have Minka in the slot, then who's playing free safety? So they will drop him down and play slot and play robber. And I think it's a bit of a dilemma about how they're going to go about that this year. But you don't want Minka in that full time slot role, because then who's replacing Minka at free safety options there are pretty limited.
Right.
Reginald Rivers saying the player we signed from the Jets will make the roster. So big Arthur Millette fan is Reginald. Matthew talked about Anthony McFarland. Will he take a step in his second year? I mentioned that earlier. I think he has the potential to. I think last year there were a lot of factors working against him, being a redshirt sophomore, the pandemic, and just being behind a team that could not run. Regardless, he was in the backfield. Connor had more success, but it still was not where it needed to be. Going through a couple more questions here. Again, send a super chat if you want your question to be guaranteed to be asked and answered. Doug Swagger, a couple questions. Hi, Alex and Dave. Why didn't we sign a veteran offensive tackle this offseason? Haig and Chooks are not good, and Banner's unproven. I think it could kill us this year. I mean, Haig was the veteran tackle they signed. He's not coming back to this team. He is brand new to the Pittsburgh Steelers, so he is the veteran tackle. Maybe not the guy that you would have wanted them to sign, but they did sign Joe Haig to be that swing guy that can also work as that sixth offensive lineman and some heavier personnel. And also asking about Doug Swagger is on no cornerback safety signings. Is that confidence in Shakur Brown or James Pierre? I mean, they're trying to sign these guys. They're just, the money's a big issue, an injury with Malik Hooker. So I don't think that really necessarily signals confidence. And Pierre's going to play on the outside. So he's not going to be anything about slot work or anything like that.
I mean, they've treated a free agency like, I mean, really they do almost every year. I mean, I don't know why it's kind of shocking where they're at right now, and people will look and say, well, they got $7 million in cap space right now. I say this, I mean, almost every podcast, it's already spoken for, folks. When you look at, I mean, this team is going to want to take around $7 million into the regular season to have in season cap space. All right. Now, obviously, they still got work to do between now and the regular season. You got to afford a 52nd and 53rd player on the roster. You got to probably, it looks like it's now, instead of a 12 man practice squad, probably going to be more along the lines of 16 if you believe what's come across this last week
Hmm.
here. So that's a little bit more expenditure there that you're going to have, because you have to accommodate a 16-man practice squad there. You still have to, not that it's going to eat up much of any cap space, but Kendrick Green, you still got to get that deal signed there. You still got to restructure the contracts of Stephon Tuitt and Chris Boswell. That'll free up $5 million, but you'll need that $5 million to go with whatever else you have left to give you the $7 million that you want to have to go into the season. So, I mean, to think that this team's going to go out there and pay $4, $5, $6 million a season for an experienced tackle, it's just not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they could get them voidable years and all like that. But I mean, you know, how many voidable year contracts do you want this team to start stacking into 2022 on top
Right.
of it? Now if an injury happens here, well then yeah, it might kind of force your hand once you get closer to the season here. But I'm not shocked at all that all they've got. And look, they overpaid for Joe Haig,
Yeah,
you
they
know,
did.
but I mean that's it. That's your experienced tackle right now.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dave. Matt Boatwright saying, just jumped in to say, you all rock, keep the good word rolling. 2 hour plus pods, please. I'm sure they're going to return. We had a 2 hour pod on Friday, 2 hours and 10 minutes. So hopefully that made you happy there, Matt. Saloon, the question from earlier saying, excuse me, great show, guys. Do you think the Steelers will use more analytics this year? In your opinion, should they? Cheers from Brazil. I doubt it. They really haven't made any sort of front office moves that would signal that, unless they were hire Kareem Kasim back, who left his job with Jacksonville just a couple months in. But Colbert and Tomlin, they're old school, they're gut guys. I mean, obviously we don't know exactly the inner workings of analytics, and they're incorporated in some form or fashion in Pittsburgh, like it is every NFL team. But I think they probably should some more, especially when it comes to clock management and stuff like that. But I don't think that's going to change this year. I think Tomlin and Colbert kind of stuck in their ways.
Yeah, we don't know what level actually they do or they don't. You know,
Right, but
we have an idea, but we don't know for sure what kind of stuff they put more stock in, especially on game to game stuff versus maybe draft analytics, and they seem to be more draft analytics driven. Measurable than obviously in game or actually football. X and those points and all.
mhm. DSCNT with a different opinion on the Steelers tackle situation. Appreciate the input. He says, fans acting like this is the first time we have new tackles. Max Starks, Marvel Smith, Villanueva were all unknowns before they got a chance. Trust the Steelers. They know what they're doing. Fair point there. Let's get to a couple more questions here. Todd's asking a division question again. Where do we see the Steelers finishing? I mean, I'll wait through training camp and those kind of moves, but I think this will be negative, and people will get on me for it, but that's fair. It's probably going to be an 8 or 9 win team. I think they can still be competitive, and it's not going to be some sort of terrible, miserable season. And obviously, you win 8, 9 games, you can turn that into 10 pretty easily with a divisional win, and they'll be in the thick of it. But I think this roster has gotten worse. It's taken a step back, and the Browns have gotten better, while the Ravens, I think, have gotten about the same, plateaued, maybe just gotten a little bit better as well. So I'm seeing a 8 or 9 win team for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that's why I'm seeing them as around a nine at best win team. Look, they could finish first, second, or third in division. I really think. I mean,
Yeah, but to me, I don't think 9 wins the division. I know you do.
I think there's a chance that could happen.
I just 9-8, winning the North. I know. When was the last time 9 wins won the North?
Look, I mean, look at that. Look at the, look. Do you think Baltimore is as good as maybe some seem to think they are this year? Do you think Cleveland's as good as Obviously, you'd probably rank them both ahead of where you would rank the Steelers right now. But how
Yeah.
far ahead would you put them?
I mean, it's hard for me to quantify that, but I think they're both good teams. I think they're both better than Pittsburgh. So I get the idea of it is a very competitive AFC North, and those teams could beat up on each other, and I think keep everyone's win totals down. But 9-8 to win the North, it's hard for me to envision that. I think at least double digit wins will get you there. All right, couple more questions here, and appreciate all the comments again. Dave and I here every other Monday, twice a month, answering your guys' questions. Let's see. Nick saying, been a while, guys. If Malik Hooker somehow ended up here, do you think Edmonds would play sub linebacker semi regularly? No, I don't know if Hooker would even really play or start right away. He'd be probably more depth. Maybe some sort of sub package role, the dime guy or something like that. So maybe Edmonds would kick down, is kind of what you're asking there. So we'd have to see. But I think Edmonds is probably comfortable in his spot, and I don't really want to move him too much because he's at least slowly but growing in kind of the strong safety spot he's been in for a couple of years now.
A lot of people sure are putting a lot of stock in Malik Hooker for a guy that's been injured so much.
Yeah. I think he's finished one season in his career. career at 24 years old. Not doesn't generally get better the later you get into your career.
No.
But we'll see. I mean, I wouldn't mind the signing if it's dirt
I mean,
cheap. I
look at
mean,
what
I'm fine
if
with
you
it.
got him dirt cheap, you could do worse at depth.
Hmm.
There. But I mean, people expect him to come in and make a huge impact if they did sign him. I think they look. I mean, can he play special teams? That's the biggest
Hmm.
thing right out of the chute because they're not going to sign a guy to be a backup safety and him not contribute in some shape or form on special teams. That's where he's going to have to cut his teeth initially. There,
Hmm.
he's just not going to walk off the street and learn that defense and see playing time. Something would have to happen for him to start playing a considerable amount of snaps. Period,
Yeah.
whether it
Yeah.
be sub package or not.
Right.
So
Let's see. A couple more questions. Matthew saying, can Highsmith hit double-digit sacks this year? It's possible, but I think I don't know if his ceiling is going to be kind of a double-digit sack guy even in a 17-game season. I think he's kind of more of a consistent pass rusher who's going to get a lot of pressure. Won't always convert those into sacks. Kind of the theme of last year. I think he's kind of probably top out at around a 7 to 8 sack guy is my guess.
boy, I think if he hit 8, you got to be doing backflips.
Yeah. What do you think he will hit? Do you think 8's too high, or do you think that's
I mean, it all depends on how the whole
sure?
quality. Is he going to get a couple of chase downs and all like that? I think anywhere between. I mean, it's a pretty big range, 5 to 8.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah, that's fair. If he hits 10, then yeah, it's fantastic.
Oh,
Uh,
if he hits double digit, I mean, yeah, I mean, backflips for sure. Yeah.
Couple more questions here. James saying Kendrick isn't signed yet. Yeah, Kendrick Green, the only rookie not yet to sign, but he will soon. Don't worry about that one bit, James.
It's some sort of language issue is all it is.
Yeah.
It's obviously not money related or anything along those lines. It might be something as simple as what is his split amounts going to
Mm,
be if he had to go on IR.
yeah.
That could be being where he is, being a third round draft pick. It's either offset language or it's probably split, what they call split salary language when it comes to him. So it'll get done.
Russ Obenstein, Alex, and Dave, do we still need another edge rusher? I would. I would add somebody through some avenue, whether that's signing a free agent like a Trent Murphy or, trading for somebody come August, a very common Kevin Colbert move to make, or probably I think most likely involve signing or I should say claiming or signing an edge rusher at the cutdown date right before the start of the season. I think would probably be their route to go. But of course, they'll carry Roche and Marsh and whoever else in the camp and see how those guys look and make their decisions from there. I think that's generally their approach is bring the guys to Latrobe and see who plays well, who doesn't, what you have and what you don't, and then make your decisions based off of that information.
Yeah, I don't think it's out of the question. Obviously, if they add a position, it very well could be outside linebacker.
James, you're very welcome for the answer there on Kendrick Green. Appreciate you stopping by and hanging out with us. And I think probably our last question here of the chat is going to be from Mike Adesso saying, what's more likely, Najee wins Offensive Rookie of the Year or TJ finally winning Defensive Player of the Year or both? A really good question there, Mike. Man, I'm going to go Watt just because, I mean, Harris is going to have really strong numbers, but in this quarterback driven world, it's just so tough to be that rookie of the year offensively as a running back. And you have a quarterback class of Lawrence and Fields and Jones and Trey Lance, etc. You think one of those rookies is going to play really well this year. And so, just by nature of the star power of the quarterback, it's going to be hard for Harris. And so I'll go TJ Watt here.
I'm going to go the other way there.
Okay.
In fact, I've got some dead presidents that think that as well too. I think there's a more legitimate chance that Najee Harris wins Offensive Rookie of the Year than I do TJ winning Defensive Player of the Year. And man, for starters, is if Najee hits 1,500 to 1,800 total yards, that's going to put him most definitely in the conversation.
Sure.
Especially if he has 8 to 10 to 12 touchdowns on top of it, which is a real legitimate possibility. I think the legitimacy of Najee, if he stays healthy, of hitting 1,500 total yards from scrimmage and hitting at least 10 touchdowns, I think the probability of that's high. Now, we saw what happened. As good a season as TJ Watt had last year, it still wasn't enough, man.
Mm-hmm. No,
And
I know.
Is he going to be able to duplicate that season that he had last year? And even if he does, is that going to be enough to win Defensive Player of the Year? So and it's none of that's a slight on TJ. Obviously, the most talented player the Steelers have, defensively, and nothing says he can't do it. But if you want to ask the probability factor, what I think's most likely to happen, I would have to put my money on Najee Harris possibly winning Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, that's a really compelling argument. You're convincing me there, Dave. I might want to switch my answer. And I know that Trey Lance won't start, but I'm just saying one of those quarterbacks is going to emerge and play really well. And listen, Jimmy Garoppolo's not been the beacon of good health. That's partially part of the reason why they drafted Trey Lance at pick number 3, or Zach Wilson with the Jets. And so someone's going to emerge and someone's going to play well. And the way that Justin Herbert threw for 4,000 yards and 30 something touchdowns, it's just tough when quarterbacks just dominate the NFL. But I hear you, and I think it could go either way. And let's hope one of those guys wins an award, because that means the Steelers probably had, at least those guys had a good year, and there's a better chance the Steelers had a really good year if one of those guys is absolutely dominating their season. Last stat here I want to give you guys on TJ Watt, since we mentioned it, is that if TJ Watt hits 13 sacks this season, he'll become only the second player in NFL official history to have 4 straight years of 13 plus sacks. That would join only Reggie White, who did it twice in his career, 2 separate occasions of it. So really rooting hard for this with TJ Watt, because that'll be a pretty impressive company to join him and Reggie White in the same boat.
Impressive indeed.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's live stream. Appreciate you guys being here. I know it's the offseason, not a ton going on, but we'll have a lot of great content tomorrow on Steelers Depot. We'll have player interviews from OTAs as they get back to practice over there in downtown Pittsburgh. So thank you guys for being here. And Dave Bryan, as always, thank you for being here as well.
Thank you for having me, and thank you everybody who showed up. Great questions as usual. Peace and love. Peace and love.
Be sure to like and subscribe and follow the podcast tomorrow. Terrible Podcast will be back tomorrow, probably early afternoon for you guys to listen to. So thank you guys for being here, and we'll talk to you soon.